Welcome, brave souls, to Fear File Chronicles, your one-way ticket to spine-chilling stories and terrifying tales. Tonight, we'll be diving into the darkest corners of the human mind with the story, The Gravekeeper's Oath, Parts 1 and 2, penned by the twisted mind of True God 92. Together, we'll explore the unexplained and face our deepest fears. But before we begin, if you enjoy trembling in terror, be sure to hit that like button. Share this video with your fellow fear fanatics and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click the bell notification so you never miss an eerie episode. Your support truly means the world to us. So feel free to leave a comment below to join the Fear File Chronicles community. Now, without further ado, let's unravel the mysteries of the unknown together as we delve into tonight's fear-inducing story, The Gravekeeper's Oath, Parts 1 and 2. Dim the lights and prepare yourself for a chilling journey into the Fear File Chronicles. The Gravekeeper had lived for centuries, bound to his duty of guarding the ancient burial grounds. Each night, as darkness fell, he stood watch over the graves, awaiting the inevitable. For as long as he could remember, the dead had risen from their tombs, fueled by ancient grudges and a thirst for revenge. The Gravekeeper faced these horrors each year, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the legions of buried abominations and creatures exiled from history seemed more numerous. Their eyes glowed with a fierce, otherworldly light as they clawed their way out of the graves. The Gravekeeper stood his ground, wielding his trusty shovel with expert precision. Having fought these creatures before, he knew their weaknesses. However, tonight, they seemed more determined than ever to escape their eternal slumber. The Gravekeeper fought valiantly, swinging his shovel with all his might to fend off the relentless attacks of the undead. But they kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. The Gravekeeper was growing tired, yet he knew he couldn't give up. He was bound to his duty and resolved to fight until his dying breath. As the night wore on, his arms grew heavy and his movement slowed. The creatures were closing in on him, their claws tearing at his flesh. Yet he refused to surrender. He couldn't let them escape and wreak havoc beyond the graveyard. With a final burst of energy, he swung his shovel one last time, landing the decisive blow. The creatures retreated back to their graves. He collapsed to the ground, exhausted but victorious, having fulfilled his duty once again. As dawn approached, the Gravekeeper rose, bruised and battered, but alive. Tonight's battle was just one of many. He knew he would continue to fight until the end of time. His duty was eternal, and he was bound to it. The Gravekeeper surveyed the scene around him, catching his breath. The graveyard was a mess. Freshly dug graves and overturned tombstones were scattered throughout, evidence of the creature's destructive force. But the Gravekeeper didn't mind. This was part of his duty. Centuries of service had led him to accept his fate as an immortal guardian of the dead. His work, keeping the creatures and abominations at bay, filled him with pride. As the sun rose higher, he began tidying the graveyard. Writing tombstones and filling in graves, he showed respect to the deceased. This quiet, meditative task gave him a sense of purpose and fulfillment. As he worked, he reflected on the events of the previous night. The creatures had been particularly fierce. He knew it was only a matter of time before they would try to escape again. But he was ready for them. He had faced them before and would do so again. He knew his duty was unending. Yet he felt solace in knowing he was not alone. The dead depended on him for their safety. Those who knew of his sacrifices offered their support, even if they didn't fully comprehend his responsibilities. As he finished his work and prepared to return to his vigil, he felt a sense of peace. Tonight would bring new challenges, new horrors to face. But he was ready. He was the Gravekeeper, bound to his duty for all eternity. He would not falter. A harsh gust of wind caught him off guard, and he looked up at the sky. Large rain clouds formed an ominous darkness around the graveyard. Despite the growing storm, he remained alert. Rumors spoke of a notorious group of thieves targeting graveyards. These thieves would steal anything valuable they could find. They sought to profit off the grieving families who had recently lost a loved one. He knew it was his duty to protect not only the graves, but also those mourning. Making his way back to his station, he noticed a shadowy figure near a tombstone. Quickly lifting his shovel, he marched towards the intruder. The figure turned, revealing a young woman clutching a bouquet of flowers. He relaxed his grip on the shovel, understanding that she was not a threat. She had come to visit her mother's grave, seeking solace. He nodded and offered to keep an eye out for her. He ensured she would be safe as she mourned. Together, they stood in the rain, sharing stories of their loved ones who had passed on. He felt camaraderie with the woman, for he too was forever bound to his duty. As the rain subsided, the woman thanked him and left. The gravekeeper returned to his post, content in his duty. Despite the challenges he faced, he knew his purpose was to protect both the graves and the living who sought comfort. As long as he remained steadfast, the graveyard would continue to be a place of peace and solace. As night approached, a sense of evil began to manifest. He could feel it in the air, a cold, sinister presence encroaching upon the graveyard. This was not natural, but the work of something far more malevolent. Suddenly, he heard a strange noise from a tomb. It sounded like scraping and clawing. Knowing this was not normal, he quickly approached the source. As he neared, the noise grew louder and more frantic. He lifted his shovel, ready for whatever horror awaited him. To his surprise, he found a group of rats attempting to dig their way out of the tomb. While relieved, he knew their presence was not mere coincidence. He remembered stories of witches using rats for their dark magic. He knew he had to act fast to cleanse the graveyard. Quickly gathering his tools, he began his cleansing ritual. Calling upon the powers of light, he aimed to banish the evil spirits prowling the graveyard. As he did so, the rats scurried away. Their control over the graveyard was broken, but the gravekeeper knew his work was not done. When the ritual was done, the gravekeeper felt exhausted but fulfilled. He had once again protected the graveyard from harm, defending the resting places of those who had passed on. As he looked out at the peaceful and quiet graveyard, he knew that his duty would never end. No matter how tired he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. He made his way back to his cottage at the edge of the graveyard. The gravekeeper couldn't help but think about the future. He wondered how long he would continue to be the protector of the graveyard. He pondered on what would happen when he was no longer there to perform his duties. For now, he pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the present. As he entered his small cottage, he lit a fire in the hearth. He settled into his favorite chair. Leaning back and closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and allowed himself a few moments of rest before resuming his daily routine. The gravekeeper was a solitary figure. However, he did not feel lonely. He felt a deep connection to the graveyard and the souls that resided there. He knew that he was not alone in his duty, and that the spirits of the departed were watching over him. As the night wore on, the gravekeeper remained vigilant, keeping a watchful eye on the graveyard. The sound of rustling leaves and the occasional hooting of an owl were the only sounds that broke the silence. The gravekeeper knew that he could never let his guard down. He was the only one standing between the graveyard and the forces of darkness. With the dawn came a new day, and the gravekeeper rose from his chair, ready to begin his duties once again. As he walked through the graveyard, he felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that he had fulfilled his duty the night before, and that the souls of the departed were at peace. As the sun rose higher in the sky, the gravekeeper continued his rounds. He knew that his duty would never end, but he also knew that he would never tire of his duty. It was his calling and his purpose in life. While pacing the grounds, he stumbled upon an open mausoleum. The gravekeeper's heart leapt into his throat as he saw the bodies crawling out of their coffins. For a moment, he froze in fear, unsure of what to do. Then he remembered his duty. He was the protector of the graveyard, and it was his responsibility to defend it against all threats, no matter how terrifying they might be. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, brandishing his trusty shovel. The bodies turned towards him, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The Gravekeeper could sense the dark energy emanating from them. He knew that he was facing a powerful enemy, but he did not falter. He stepped forward, swinging his shovel with all his might. The bodies lunged at him, but he dodged and weaved, striking them down one by one. The fight was long and grueling, but the Gravekeeper did not give up. He fought with all his strength and determination, knowing that the fate of the graveyard and its inhabitants depended on him. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the last of the bodies lay still on the ground. The Gravekeeper was covered in sweat and dirt, and his muscles ached from the exertion. But he felt a sense of pride and satisfaction knowing that he had protected the graveyard once again. As he made his way back to his cottage, the Gravekeeper knew that he had faced a formidable enemy. He wondered why the bodies rose from their graves. He knew that he would have to remain vigilant in case the threat returned. But for now, he was content in the knowledge that he had fulfilled his duty. He had defended the graveyard and its inhabitants, and he had emerged victorious. Thinking about what his aging body had just gone through, he collapsed into his chair, exhausted but relieved. He knew that he had faced a powerful enemy, and he was grateful that he had emerged victorious once again. But even as he rested, his mind was racing with questions. Who or what had raised bodies from their graves? Was this a new threat or one that had found its way back to challenge him? Most importantly, was he truly prepared for whatever lay ahead? He knew that although he was immortal, he could still be helplessly wounded. As he sat there, lost in thought, a knock came at his door. He rose from his chair, his shovel at the ready, and cautiously approached the door. But when he opened it, he was surprised to see a young woman standing there.
"Please, sir,"
her voice trembling.
"I need your help. My father has fallen ill, and I fear that he is close to death. He has always been a faithful servant of the graveyard, and I believe that he would want to be buried here when he passes."
The Gravekeeper listened to her story, his heart filled with compassion. He knew that death was a natural part of life, and that it was his duty to ensure that those who passed on were given a proper resting place. He nodded to the young woman and followed her back to her home. There, he found the woman's father lying in his bed, weak and frail. The man's breathing was labored, and the Gravekeeper knew that he did not have long to live. With gentle hands, the Gravekeeper tended to the man, easing his pain and comforting him in his final moments. The man lifted his head to meet the Gravekeeper's eyes.
"Please watch over my Grace. She's all I have left in this world. She bears the Keeper's mark. I know she'll serve you well."
With that, the man passed on. The Gravekeeper then prepared his body for burial, ensuring that he would rest in peace in the graveyard that he had served so faithfully. As he made his way back to his cottage, Grace joined him. The Gravekeeper knew that his duty was not just to defend the graveyard from external threats, but also to provide comfort and compassion to those who had lost loved ones. He knew that his duty was to be a protector, a caretaker, a friend, and now a teacher. Grace had a lot to learn, but he had a feeling she'd do great. Well, my friends, we've reached the end of tonight's chilling tale, The Gravekeeper's Oath, Parts 1 and 2, by the talented True God 92. I hope you've enjoyed our descent into darkness, and that you'll carry a piece of the Fearfile Chronicles with you as you drift into uneasy dreams. If our story left you shivering and shaking, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who crave a good scare, and subscribe to the Fearfile Chronicles for more haunting horrors. Remember to hit the bell notification so you're always among the first to know when a new nightmare awaits. As always, we appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sharing your fears and frights with us truly means a lot, so don't be shy to engage with our sinister community. Until next time, Remember to embrace the darkness, for it is within the shadows that our most terrifying stories are born. Good night, and stay scared.